Imagine the chill of dawn on a coastal village. Mist rolls in from the sea, and the only sounds are waves and the distant cries of seabirds. Suddenly, faint shadows appear in the fog, long, narrow ships cutting silently across the water. Their carved dragon heads loom like monsters from another world, and as the wind shifts, the rhythmic beat of oars reaches the shore. Panic spreads instantly. People know what is coming. The Northmen have arrived. Viking raids were not drunken chaos, as movies often suggest. They were precise, organized operations designed for maximum speed, shock, and profit. Long before a raid began, leaders chose their targets carefully. Monasteries with golden chalices, villages full of livestock, or trading ports with silver coins. These were prime objectives. Scouts sometimes disguised themselves as traders months ahead of time, learning the layout of rivers, tides, and defenses. The raid that struck Lindisfarne in 793, often remembered as the beginning of the Viking Age, was no accident. It was calculated, and it showed the Vikings just how easy and rewarding these strikes could be. Once a target was chosen, preparation began. The longship itself was the secret weapon of the Viking world. Light, fast, and flexible, it could cross the stormy North Sea, slip into shallow rivers, and land directly on a beach without a dock. Crews of 40 to 60 warriors packed inside, shields hanging along the sides like armor, sails dyed bright or blood red to intimidate. They carried axes, swords, and spears, but also ropes for dragging loot, iron chains for prisoners, and tar to set buildings aflame. Everything was planned for speed. Get in, strike hard, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. The approach was often timed for dawn. Villagers barely awake would hear only the sudden roar of oars in unison, the chanting of rowers, or the crack of a sail filling with wind. When the fog parted, it revealed a sight that terrified all of Europe. Sleek ships gliding forward, warriors waiting inside, their faces painted or hidden under helmets. Chroniclers described it as if demons had risen from the sea. In truth, it was ruthless human efficiency. When the ships struck the sand or riverbank, warriors leapt into the water, shields up. If resistance appeared, they locked into a shield wall, advancing like a living wall of wood and iron. Archers launched arrows, sometimes flaming, to scatter defenders. But often, villagers broke and fled before the Vikings even reached them. Some raiders guarded the ships, ensuring their only way home stayed secure, while the main force surged inland. Imagine being a farmer cooking breakfast when, in moments, strangers with axes kicked open your door. The speed alone was overwhelming. The attack was brutal. In monasteries, monks clutching relics were cut down or chained. Gold chalices, crosses, and manuscripts, treasures painstakingly made over generations, were seized in minutes. In villages, barns were emptied, food stores ransacked, and animals herded to the shore. Homes went up in flames, black smoke rising high as both warning and symbol of Viking dominance. The violence was not random. It was psychological warfare designed to terrify entire regions into surrendering without a fight the next time. But the most valuable prize was not always silver or gold. It was people. Women and children were dragged screaming to the ships. Wealthy villagers were taken hostage for ransom, their lives traded for bags of silver. Skilled artisans were chained and forced to work in Viking settlements. Slaves, called thralls, were the backbone of the Viking economy. Captives filled markets in Dublin and Hedeby and were sold across Europe, even as far as the Middle East. A successful raid might bring back more living bodies than treasure, because in the Viking world, human lives were currency. Then came the escape, a raid was never meant to last long. The longer Vikings lingered, the greater the risk of an army gathering against them. Within hours, the ships were loaded with plunder and captives, and the sails went up. Their shallow draft vessels could vanish down rivers or back to sea before defenders even arrived. This speed made them untouchable. In 845, when Ragnar Lothbrok sailed up the Seine with 120 ships and raided Paris, the Frankish king realized he could not stop them. Instead, he paid a massive ransom, the infamous Danegeld, simply to make them leave. It was not just robbery, it was economic warfare. Back home or at sea, the spoils were divided. The leader always claimed the largest share, ensuring his authority. Loyal warriors were rewarded with silver, weapons, or slaves. Even the lowest oarsman could return from a single raid richer than a farmer might become in a lifetime. This wealth-fed loyalty encouraged new recruits and financed even larger raids the next season. And it wasn't only treasure. Foreign weapons, exotic goods, even ideas and technologies traveled back with the Vikings, changing their world as much as they changed Europe's. Yet the most devastating impact was not measured in gold or captives. It was fear. Smoke rising from coastal villages spread news faster than riders. Stories of burning churches, slaughtered monks, and stolen children traveled across kingdoms, haunting people far from the shore. Soon, entire regions began fortifying towns, building watchtowers, and hiring guards. Kings paid tribute just to buy peace. Fear itself became the Vikings' strongest weapon, because the reputation of sudden, unstoppable raids often forced enemies to surrender before a single axe was raised. Over time, those raids reshaped Europe. Kingdoms adapted, fortresses rose, armies modernized, but the Vikings also changed. What began as lightning strikes of terror evolved into settlement. Raiders stayed, carving out territories in Ireland, Normandy, and the Danelaw of England. The same men who once burned villages later ruled them, collecting taxes instead of plunder. But it all began with the same chilling scene. Longships on the horizon, a rush to the shore, and the screams of people caught unprepared. So what did a Viking raid really look like? It was not a mindless swarm of barbarians, but a cold, calculated sequence, scouting, preparing, landing, striking, enslaving, and vanishing with the tide. It was brutal, yes, but it was also organized. It reshaped not just the lives of those who suffered, but the entire course of medieval Europe. And even today, over 1,000 years later, the very word Viking still carries echoes of fear, because their raids were more than violence. They were strategy, they were power, and for nearly 3 centuries, they were unstoppable.